all of these stories are part of kaidan. Kaidan are spooky, strange tales. And there are many of them that have been gathered together into anthologies over time. And if you're interested in reading more right now, you can actually go to Project Gutenberg and you can read an anthology put together by Lafcadio O'Hearn, 19th century journalist who fell in love with Japan and collected them for us. And what's interesting about kaidan is the kai. And let's talk about that for a moment, because I love the history of stories. But I promise you, I'll get back to those scary stories. That's one of the things about hanging out with the librarian. I'm always going to tell you interesting things. Etymology is the history of words. And so there you see kaidan. The writing system that we're looking at right now is kanji. Kanji is one of the writing systems used in Japan. And it actually comes from China originally, the ideograms that you see here. And notice how I've got the red highlighted again and again. Well, yokai. Yokai are those ghosts, ghouls, and goblins that you might be familiar with Pokemon. So pocket monsters, those monsters are yokai. Ayakashi. Ayakashi is an ancient term, but it also has that character in there, but it's pronounced in a different way. There's also mononoke, mysterious things. Again, that K is the same character as the Kai. It's just pronounced differently. All of these things are strange, mysterious, and uncanny. And you might be familiar with Mononoke from Princess Mononoke, the animated film from Studio Ghibli. This, again, this mysterious otherworldly term is applied to all of the ghosts and spirits that live in the forest god's domain. And it's interesting, this tradition is quite old, and the telling of spooky tales is something that touches on every culture throughout the globe. But how did we get kaidan? How did we get here today to have, Kuchisake Onna and all of these ghosts and ghouls that live in our pockets? Well, way back during the Sengoku period, the Warring States period, they used to tell 100 Buddhist stories to conjure a miracle in really deep and dark times. It was a way for communities to come together to spread hope and look to better times. Those stories are sometimes told by itinerant wandering storytellers, the otogishu. And those storytellers were sometimes priests, sometimes wandering monks, and they were said to have mystical powers associated with them. Hence, they turn up in the stories again and again until the otogishu become signifiers for, oh, this is kaidan. We're hearing spooky stories because we have a wandering storyteller. And again, it pops up in anime all the time. You might be familiar with the Mononoke series, and Kusuri Uri is a wandering medicine seller, but he's also a demon exorcist. And again, this brings us back to the Tokugawa era. So way back 1600s through 1850s. This was a very prosperous time that came out of the Warring States period. So the government stabilized. There became a flourishing of the arts. There were printing presses that made it possible for cheap literature to be created and purchased by an increasingly literate society. And what did people do? They got together and they told ghost stories because it's fun. And so that's what's happening here in this Japanese woodblock print by Hokusai. And you might be familiar with Hokusai from the Great Wave of Kanagawa. And what happens is it generally in the summertime, when the telling of spooky tales is supposed to send a chill down your spine in the hot afternoon and evenings of the hottest time of year, people would get together in tea houses or at friends' places or out in the middle of nowhere. And the way it goes is you would light 100 candles and everyone would tell their spooky story. And one by one, the candles would be extinguished. And one by one, everyone would tell their tale. And by the end of this telling, it would be in the middle of the night and in the middle of the dark. And with the extinguishing of that last candle and the telling of that last tale, you were said to be conjuring something supernatural. And that, my friends, is Yaku Monogatari Kaidan Kai, the telling of the 100 strange tales. And you can see in the print here that these fellows got more than they bargained for. They thought they were telling spooky tales, but they ended up summoning a bunch of yokai that are like, oh, keep telling stories, friend. We want to hear more about all of our fun exploits. Which brings us again to the next of our spooky tales, the giant's hand. Long, long ago, as these stories always go, in the middle of nowhere, in the mountains, high and far away from the city, there was not much to do for fun. And all the young men of the village, thinking themselves brave young fellows, decided, let's go out to the abandoned mansion that's out at the edge of town. Let's tell tales, spooky, chilling tales, to prove our bravery. So we spend the night out there, and then everyone in the village will know, oh, look at these brave young men. They went out into that haunted mansion, and they stayed all night long. We can trust them. They know what they're doing. And so the young men went out, and they went and dug around and found a room that wasn't completely in disrepair. And they found some mats that were good enough to keep them from the bugs and the rot. And they made a cozy little light for themselves out of an old lamp that had been knocked over. And they gathered, huddled together there, listening to the evening sounds and telling stories from far and wide, strange tales of all kinds of things that go bump in the night. And one by one they told their stories until the last young man was left shivering with terror as his friends looked on. Go on, they said, tell your last tale. Let us see if we can see a ghost. What fun. But no, that young man was terrified. He's like, no, we mustn't. So scared was he ran off and went home. And all of his friends laughed at him as he went. And they said, we are brave young men. We will stay here. Tomorrow we will make fun of our friend who is not brave enough to stay with us. And so off they drifted, slowly as they listened to the evening sounds. The crickets, the wind, until it stopped. Not quite sure if they were awake or asleep. Lying on the mats of the floor, looking up overhead into the dark, they saw a monstrous hand peel from the shadows there, hovering over them, so huge, so monstrous, it seemed to fill the very room and exceed it until it could have crushed the very sky. With a shriek of terror, one of the young men leapt to his feet and struck out with his sword, striking that mighty hand about to fall. And then, such a strange thing, it vanished. And then there was a pip, pip, pip. Little thing fell from above and landed beside him. The tiniest little spider, no bigger than your thumb, had been dangling high above from the ceiling, had dropped down in front of that old lamp and cast such shadow upon the wall, making them think that little tiny spider was a monstrous giant hand. And they felt so foolish, they did. How terrified they were of such a simple thing. And feeling terrible, they didn't give their friend any trouble the next day, because who knows when a spider the size of your thumb could be as big as a giant's hand. What's fun about the kaiden is they're full of transformations. They don't always have to be spooky in terms of ghosts and haunting, chilling things. They can be funny. They can just be weird. And that's the fun about kaiden, is they're just as diverse as all of us. And that brings us to another of our ghoulish bumps in the night, the bakemono, the trickster changing things. And you're quite familiar with these, I'm sure. You've seen them in all kinds of animated films, video games, maybe comic books and whatnot. It's said that these trickster animals can transform into all kinds of things. We have lovely raccoon here, tanuki, the raccoon dog, very indigenous to the area of Japan. Special, not quite a raccoon, but because of his long tail, he's said to be able to transform into all kinds of things, including tea kettles and beautiful young women. There's nekomata, The trickster cat, who again can transform, and notice this cat has two tails. And what else do we have here cavorting around? Moles. What? This is a lovely drawing that is by Kyosai. Kyosai is said to be the grandfather of all yokai because of his fantastic drawings. But notice the creature in the bottom left corner. What is it? Is it a fox? Is it a weasel? Some say it might be a badger, a very particular type of badger, not the ones that we're used to with the black stripes and the white bellies. But again, creatures with tails can sometimes grow old, and they are said to sprout another on their 100th birthday that allows them to transform and deceive. And that brings us to the next tale of the evening. Mujina, the badger. Way long ago, as these stories always go, there was an old merchant man who had a shop in the heart of Edo. Edo was the name for Tokyo way back again. This shop was right on the edge of an old park, a bit of wild still left in the city. It belonged to people during the day. In fact, everyone loved to go strolling through those lovely trees and along the rivers and small ponds during the day. But at night, no one dared to go there. At night, it belonged to the yokai, not to humans. But this old merchant man, oh, he was so tired. He was so tired. He didn't want to have to go all the way around to get home. He thought to himself, I'm so old. No yokai will bother with me. I'm nothing but skin and bones, and there's no meat on me to eat. Surely they'll let me pass. So he decided that he would walk through the park rather than going around, because he was so ready to be home. And off he went after closing up his shop and blowing out all the lanterns before it, off into the path, into the lovely forest that was rather sinister at night. As he went, all the sounds changed around him. But this was no longer a place for humans. As he wandered, shivering to himself, wondering, I should turn back. I should turn back. No, how foolish I was. I don't belong here. He heard in the distance another strange sound. What is that? What is that there? Is that a woman? Is that a woman crying? Oh no, someone is stuck. Someone is stuck in the park. Like me, maybe they got lost. I must go and help. And as that old merchant man went tottering along the path, he saw in the distance a young woman, hunkered down, very much afraid, hiding her face in her sleeves, crying so piteously. And the old man went up to the young woman. Oh, young woman, please don't cry. Everything will be fine. Please, let me help you. Please, oh, don't be shy. Because the young woman was hiding her face in her sleeves, refusing to look at the old man. Let me see your pretty smile, young lady. Please, please. Shyly the young woman rose. Shyly she cozied up to the old man, and lowering her sleeve, revealed that her face was as smooth as an egg, for she had none whatsoever to reveal. Horrified, the old merchant ran, stumbling backwards, tripping through the mud, and stumbling through the bushes back out of that park, and took the long way, all the way around. Back home he went, clattering into the back kitchen where his wife was waiting for him there. Oh, wife, you will never believe what I came upon tonight. And his wife kept her back to him, like, really, do tell what you saw. And he said, wife, I was in the park. Why were you in the park? That's not where people belong after night. Well, I was lazy, wife. I wanted the shortcut. You should never take the shortcut, darling. Wife, when I'm talking to you, look at me. Look what has happened to me. And then it slowly but surely, the wife stood up and turned to see her husband. And aghast, he stumbled back. For much like that young woman in the park, his wife had no face at all. Continuing the path alongside our tricksters, the next story comes to us from EvCC alumni and Japanese club member Rochelle, who is going to tell us the tale of the spider pool.
Long, long ago, hidden within the thickest of trees, laid a pool endlessly fed by a large waterfall. Beautiful as it may be, it held danger. A Jorogumo